Released in 2020 exclusively for the Sega Mega Drive, Paprium is a game that requires no introduction. Developed by Watermelon Games, the game was surrounded by controversy after an extremely successful campaign, with people claiming they did not receive what they paid for, which, of course, added to its fame. I will avoid the controversy in this video because I want to focus solely on the game, but that's not a topic that will be hard for you to find. Hello and welcome my friends to The Flying Kick, I am Savino and today we will take a very late look at Paprium, one of the most elusive games I've had the pleasure to play. Paprium is your typical Mega Drive beaten up when it comes to the story. There isn't much here. All you need to know is quickly displayed on a fast-scrolling text, and it's right to the game. I mean, it's right to the game after you watch the barrage of credits showing who worked on the game. There are more companies here than in a Brazilian independent movie. Here, all you need to know is that you are in the future, there's a nuclear winter taking place, and all the remaining people from Earth are now living in the city called Paprium. And that's it, no clue of who you are or who you're fighting against. I even take a look at the manual thanks to my friend Dave on Twitter because I don't own the game and still there's nothing there. Apparently a nuclear winter is enough reason for beating everyone in your path. Jokes aside, you can understand what's going on here. There's a big bad guy who is trying to rule the city with an iron fist. Yeah, you won't learn that by the end of the game, but come on, this is an urban beaten up, what else did you expect? Visually, Paprium is very impressive no matter how you look at it. You can look at it as a kid in 1995 or an adult in 2025 and you will be amazed, from the beautiful sprite work with some imposing and detailed sprites to rich and stunning backgrounds. Paprium is a sight to behold. Yes, the game leans a lot on blues, pinks and greens, but considering this is a cyberpunk-themed game, the choice of colors is more than appropriate. The sprites are phenomenal, they are massive, expressive, and there's a colossal variety of enemies here. Some are clearly inspired by some famous enemies, but they still look pretty good. You can even compare Paprium characters with the characters from games like Streets of Rage 3 or Hyperstone Heist. You can clearly see how more detailed they are. Heck, this is even better than Final Fight 3, and we all know the Super Nintendo had better graphics. Okay, now that I lost half of my subscribers with one single comment, let's talk about the backgrounds, which are mesmerizing. Paprium, when it comes to details in the background, is basically an arcade game. The number of things to see here is above anything we could have dreamed back in the 90s. And what's more noteworthy here is the sheer amount of details in each and every scene. Right on the first screen of the game, you will have tons to see, from the small graffiti on the walls to Korean words written under your cell number, the table with bottles and caps lying around, to your shower in the background. It's truly outstanding. And this attention to detail will follow you throughout the whole game. The city is full of blinking signs, televisions playing shows and messages on the wall. Seriously, you can waste a bunch of time looking at everything here, especially because this game isn't very small. There was a huge effort from the art team and I can only praise them for that. Paprium, aside from the limited color palette, looks like an arcade game playing on your Mega Drive. Heck, there are arcade beat-em-ups that don't even come close to Paprium. Not to mention the parallax scrolling on the back and foregrounds, which, let's be honest here, are awesome. I know there's a bunch of chips and probably some sorcery to make the game look this good, but I won't pretend I understand any of this. All I know is that this game has 80 megabytes of memory, so of course this can only mean the game is jaw-dropping, isn't that what all those magazines taught us? When it comes to the sound, Paprium is a bit of a mixed bag. The music here is excellent, not only the compositions are superb, but their quality is outstanding. But more than the quality, what I like the most here is the variety. Paprium has an immense selection of tunes, 52 in total, which by itself is a considerable number for any beat-em up, but the game also has a ton of different styles for you to enjoy. From rock to dance, passing through chiptunes, and even some nice and cool soft jazz. It's a huge variety, and it will take you a few playthroughs to listen to them all, as we will see in a bit. Now, the sound effects and voices in the game could have been better, especially when you listen to such good tunes. The voices here are a bit hard to understand, they sound a bit muffled and metallic. The truth is, they are not that different from what you would find in some Mega Drive games, but with so many extra chips on the cartridge and the absurd amount of memory, one would expect better voices. Another thing that isn't that great here is the sound of your punches. They are lackluster, especially if you consider how good the impacts on games like Streets of Rage 2 or The Punisher are. It sounds like you're beating pillows, so soft and muffled they sound. It's not enough to ruin the game, but it doesn't help to sell the strength of your moves. And it's not only your attacks that sound not as impactful as they should, but in general, the sounds here are kinda muffled. The sounds of knives falling on the ground, the buzz when you electrocute your enemies, it's honestly a bit disappointing. One thing I would like to note here is that, according to some people, the music in the game is a bit different from the ROM since it doesn't have all the necessary chips. I didn't fully get what they meant by that, but it appears the music is more dynamic in the cartridge. Look, I'm just saying what I heard, and if any of you out there has the physical game, let me know if this is true. When it comes to gameplay and combat, Paprium has a lot in store for you. With so much memory, it's no surprise to learn that this game is quite big. To beat the game, you need to play through 10 levels, but since this game has many alternate paths, you will get way more than that. And not only that, aside from the extra paths you can take, there are also secret areas scattered around the levels that you must find to get some nice extra bonuses like new playable character. And you better take note of which path you take, because these alternate paths and secret areas will influence the game's ending. Yeah, there's more than one ending here, and you need to explore and learn the ins and outs of the level structure to get the good one. I really like when beat'em ups offer this type of thing, because it's a nice incentive to keep replaying it until you unlock or find everything the game has to offer, especially when some of these offerings are new characters. And not only characters, the game also has some extra modes for you to unlock, like the traditional arcade mode or the arena mode, which is basically a survival mode. There are also other unlockables like a bigger health bar, a boombox, and a taunt button for your characters. Talking about characters, you start the game with 3. Tug, who is your strong and slow character, Alex, the classic quick but weak female, and Dice, who is your all-rounder. All 3 have basically the same set of moves, at least the same function, but presented in different ways. Here you have your basic attack, a jump, a block, a special move, which we will discuss in a bit, a block button and a throw button. The throw here won't launch your enemies around, you can do that with your attack after grabbing them by getting closer. Here, this button is useful to throw some of the many weapons you can find in the game. You also have a secondary attack that can stun your enemies for a bit longer than your regular attacks, and it's quite useful to hit enemies that will crawl down after taking a bit, which prevents you from hitting them with your regular attack. You also will find some rides around the levels in the best Golden Axe fashion, but unfortunately, while there is a nice variety of rides, they are basically the same. While in the old Golden Axe your rides would have different attacks, here they will always perform the same move, a forward dash that bumps into your enemies. Compared with a 26-year-old game, this was pretty disappointing. Finally, let's talk about your special. When breaking barrels and boxes in the game, you will find a blue pill, which can grant you some extra strength and agility for some time, which is measured by this bar on the top of your health. The thing is, this pill is a drug, and as such, the more you use it, the more addicted you get. And you can see how addicted you are becoming by looking at your health bar. You see this blue area here? So yeah, this shows how addicted you are, and after losing some health you reach this point, your character becomes a bit weaker and slower than usual. This is a great mechanic in my opinion, because it makes you consider whether you want to use your special or not. I really like when you have these risk-reward mechanics like the one from Streets of Rage 4, and I believe I prefer things like that to a special bar that you can fill indefinitely by just beating random enemies. Now, on the bad side of things, I wish your special was more, well, special. Don't take me wrong, the special here can truly save your skin in some moments, but it is a bit underwhelming. And I say underwhelming not because the attack is weak, it's actually a truly strong move, but you don't have any real reason to use it in the game. It will surely make bosses a bit easier, but they are not that hard when you learn that you can beat all the bosses using just your flying kick or running attack. And even when Paprium throws at you a shocking amount of enemies without any slowdown, I must add, they are not a real threat to you. You can easily beat any waves of enemies or bosses without having to resort to drugs. You know, as William S. Sessions said, winners don't use drugs. Well, except for this one. And this brings me to a problem that honestly is a bit of a letdown. Paprium is a surprisingly easy game, at least on the available difficulties. There is still a harder mode that I have to unlock, but right out of the box I recommend you to put the game on the hardest difficulty if you want a challenge. You see, on my first try I beat the game on hard, which is the normal mode I think, losing only one life. And trust me, my first playthrough in this game is never aimed at beating them, but learning them. And you won't believe my surprise when I got the bad ending without ever seeing a continuous screen. The truth is, I was expecting a bit more of a challenge. The problem here is not that the game was made too easy, far from that. I believe the idea here was to make the game challenging with the number of enemies you can see on your screen. It's easy to imagine yourself taking the beating of your life, but here your enemies are extremely dumb. I have trouble imagining what happened here because there was so much effort put into this game that baffles me to see this type of oversight when it comes to the AI. The AI here is on the weaker side, with enemies more often than not getting frozen in place, completely oblivious of your presence. It's very common, especially when there are too many enemies on the screen, to see enemies simply halt their actions in a corner and do nothing. When this happens, more often than not, you have to attack the enemy to wake them up. And this can even lead to some soft locks, because enemies can get stuck outside the screen, unreachable for you. Yes, the developers knew that, and they added a feature where the enemy will respawn falling from the sky when this happens, but sometimes they won't, and you have to return to your last save point. The thing is, if you're not emulating the game, chances are that you have to start all over again. Paprium only saves your game when you get the game over screen or beat the game, so if this happens to you mid-game on original hardware, you're screwed. There are also some glitches where you grab the air or enemies and weapons that will fall through the floor and disappear in front of your eyes. I mean, it lacks a bit of refinement, but you can overlook most of these problems aside from the soft lock. The game, despite not being particularly challenging, will have some difficult spikes now and then demanding a bit more attention. But the worst offense here is that you can be locked by some enemies in a corner and lose one life without much you can do. Overall, Paprium is at the same time astonishing and a bit disappointing. The game is clearly a technical triumph for the team, and seeing a game like this running on a 16-bit machine is unbelievable. The number of sprites running around on the screen, the amount of details on the backgrounds, the quality of the music, the amount of content the game offers, it's all amazing. But when it comes to the gameplay, yeah, things are a bit on the weaker side. Don't get me wrong, I still think the game is truly fun, and if it were released in the 90s, it would probably get all the happy faces from GamePro. But we live in the future, in a time post Streets of Rage, and for a game that was obviously inspired by the former, you can't really blame someone for expecting better combat and better enemies. Paprium will probably come to modern consoles, at least that's the plan, and depending on the price, this can be an easy recommendation from me. For now, I don't think the game is worth the asking price, even because you can't buy the game through official channels anymore, and you would have to deal with scalpers asking something around $800, which is laughable, if you ask me. Yeah, there's a wrong going around, but let's avoid any problem talking about this because I know Watermelon can get widely tedious. And that's it for the video, folks. I know I should have talked about this one way earlier, but you know, sometimes life catches up with us and ruins our fun. I will be back pretty soon with more games for you guys, but until then, I hope you all have an awesome week. And remember, keep it up.